Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the stream. It is a Wednesday, November 1st, aka basically Christmas, which is a very exciting time to be alive. It's also All Saints Day, so God bless you to all of you who are celebrating, and a huge milestone day in my streaming career. If you guys are watching on Rumble, you probably already know this, but we are right now the featured stream if you go to rumble.com. So there's already 1,000 of you watching live before we've even really gotten started, which blows my mind and is such a huge crazy accomplishment I never thought would be possible as a totally independent streamer. Because of that, I will start the stream today by reintroducing myself to those of you who might not know who I am, or you might have just clicked on this and had no idea who the heck this chick actually is. Hi, my name's Isabel Brown. I am a 26-year-old independent content creator. I live in Miami, Florida, and I'm getting ready to get married, which is very exciting. So spend a lot of time here in the Florida sunshine with my fiance and my corgi sidekick, Liberty. We do a completely independent live stream here on my channel, which means I am in the spare bedroom of my apartment right now. This is not funded by a multi-million-dollar media company. This doesn't have a lot of huge overhead. I'm just a 26-year-old who's very passionate about the things going on in our culture and world today, wanting to break down culture's biggest subjects from a Gen Z perspective and try to tell objective truth to a world that is rejecting that very concept. So if you guys are joining us for maybe the first time here, we are so excited for you to be a part of our little streaming family on our corner of the internet. This is truly live. It's not pre-recorded, meaning we want to interact with you in our live chat. And especially if you are new around here, let us know who you are, where you're watching from over in our live chat. And very importantly, hit the like button right as you start to watch this stream. That might look like a little thumbs up or a little heart, depending on where you're watching. We're streaming on tons of different platforms all at the same time. And most importantly, you'll hear me say this every single time we stream, smash that follow or subscribe button, regardless of where you are watching. Like I said, this is a totally independent stream, and therefore, as a grassroots creator, just talking about crazy things going on in the world from the spare bedroom of my apartment, it means the world every single time that you guys are able to help smash those buttons and get us growing on these little independent channels one day at a time. We're going to say hi to some people in our live chat to kick things off. But first, I want to thank our amazing sponsor for today's stream that helps to keep all of this possible as an independent creator. And that's our friends over at Public Square. In addition to today being a holiday, today is a huge day for our friends running America's marketplace of more than 65,000 small businesses, all of which are pro-life, pro-family, and pro-freedom over at Public Square. Today is the day that the Public Square app rolls out in-app e-commerce and what they are calling one cart checkout. So a lot like your other favorite shopping apps, Amazon, where you might be buying a lot of things where you maybe don't feel great about supporting a certain company, Public Square is now your go-to alternative to find everything. Food to be delivered to your house, clothes that you wear, people to help you do your taxes, people to help you plan your vacation. Anything you can think of, you can find it on Public Square, and now you can check out from all of those companies all at the exact same time using their awesome, very user-friendly app. So use that link that I just dropped in our live chat to make sure that you guys are shopping from companies that share your values. And if you are a small business owner of any way, shape, or form, you need to be on Public Square. So many of you guys already have joined, and I hear the little reports from you on the back end and from the team over at Public Square, how much that's made a huge positive impact for your business. So congrats, Public Square. We love to see you continue to grow. In honor of being the featured stream on Rumble, let's kick things off over in our Rumble chat. We've got Astro Sweat, Lumpy Potato, and Be Noxious kicking things off in our chat. You guys have some very clever handles today, I gotta say. Up True Breed and Ari are tuning in. John Best is back. Great to see you, John. We've got Jeanette tuning in for the first time from upstate New York. Hey, Jeanette, so glad you're here. Kelly's watching for the first time from Ohio. Thank you so much for being here. Tuco Wright and Antipop are joining us. We've got many others starting to tune in and use that chat feature. I hope you guys all choose to follow along and tune into all of our streams in the future as well. Over on YouTube, Church Total Package and Mighty are tuning in. Obadiah and James and Brenda are in our chat. Hey guys, so good to see you. Amy and James are back, and many more. Nitty Witty and Prometheus are kicking things off over on our Getter chat, the original streaming location. Good to see that. And our Locals gang is all here in full force as well. Magic Def, Crazy Cat Lady, Johnny Diamond, Alex Padrone, and more. I love spending time with you guys every single day, and truly it is the highlight of my life as a content creator. Today we are talking about something a little controversial. So please Please feel free to weigh in at any time in our live chat, because you might not agree with where I'm coming from, and you might wholeheartedly disagree with where I'm coming from when it comes to the conversation of whether or not detransitioners should be allowed and empowered to share their story of why they chose to reunite with their biological gender. If you guys have never heard that term detransitioner before, I'll take a second to explain it, because it's kind of a new one that's popped up in the last several months or so. To be a detransitioner means that you are someone probably really young, because this is a new phenomenon that we're starting to see. You are somebody who thought that you were transgender, you were experiencing gender dysphoria. You ended up going through your gender transition at some level, in some way, shape, or form, be that taking hormone therapy, pills and hormonal injections, etc., or actually going through with gender transition surgery. And now, after completing that journey or starting that journey, you start to say, actually, I want to identify with my biological gender. I'm actually cisgender, which is the opposite of transgender. It's identifying with the gender you were born with. And I'm detransitioning. So now I kind of have to go through the whole process in reverse. It's kind of like the Uno reverse card. We've started to see several really prominent detransitioners gain traction on social media and on YouTube over the last 6 months to a year or so, sharing their stories very courageously through unbelievable, unfathomable amounts of vulnerability that I personally will never be able to relate to. I think it is so deeply courageous and truly brave of some of these people, like Chloe Cole, for example, being willing to just lay it all out on the table. These are the procedures that I had. Here's how it made me feel. Here's where it literally ruined my life in so many capacities, and why I am so unbelievably passionate about telling the truth to the world that I didn't need to go through this, and why I am going back. She has been quite a voice for truth in this conversation about gender as it pertains to Gen Z, and has done many, many speaking events. We talked about her last week on the stream because she did an art project with a student at SCAD, the Savannah College of Art and Design. And we're going to talk a little bit more about Chloe, but also just zoom out to the whole detransition conversation. The debate about whether or not detrans individuals, detransitioners, should be sharing their story publicly like this on social media or on the news or on podcasts or on live streams like this one has really ablazed the internet again with a newfound passion this week, because a very controversial short documentary of about 20 minutes produced by my friends over at PragerU. Some of you guys who are new might not know my very first job out of college was an internship with PragerU, learning about content creation. So we love our team over there. We love Dennis and Marissa and the whole gang. They do some incredible work. PragerU just put out this week a short documentary that's about 20 minutes long called DETRANS, all caps, one word, exposing this phenomenon for children and teenagers in particular. It is a gripping watch, and I highly, highly recommend that you guys do so. I'll drop the link for where you can download the PragerU app, because as I'm sure you can imagine, it's likely to get censored pretty much everywhere else, so you can watch it in full length exclusively on the PragerU app using the link that I'm dropping in our live chat right now. Feel free to just open that up into another tab, and you can come back to it after the stream so that you guys can watch it. We'll watch the trailer here in a second, but they really wanted to focus on the issue of children and teenagers. So we're talking about 10, 11, 12, 15, 16-year-olds who are being pushed into gender dysphoria to a level that maybe they didn't feel particularly comfortable with at first when they started to question their gender. They ended up being told by all of the medical professionals in their lives the only way to be truly affirmed, the only way to be truly loved is to take extremely controversial hormone therapy. I don't really love that word as someone with 2 degrees in biomedical sciences myself. It's a bit of a misnomer in my opinion. Others probably would vehemently disagree with me on that. Or even undergo elective surgery, things like elective double mastectomies, elective hysterectomies, and more, to feel more like themselves, even though what they really needed at that time was therapy. What they really needed at that time was the opposite of what our society would call affirmative care. And it is a fascinating expose from these detransitioners themselves, sharing their stories of why they wish they could go back. Let's watch the trailer for this film, and then I'm going to show you some of the conversations that are happening on the internet this week about the propaganda that's being put out by PragerU or Chloe Cole or other individuals who are trying to draw attention to this often silenced and often censored subject. I would have no doubt in my mind, for example, that our stream today might experience some censorship, even if it's just demonetizing that particular stream. Looking at you, certain platforms, I don't need to say certain things. Thank God for Rumble is all I'm going to say. And so it's fascinating to see why people have this like visceral, angry, vehemently, almost evil reaction to people wanting to share their stories authentically. Let's take a look at this.
I'm just going to do a little voice up. 1 month on TV.
I wanted to alleviate my pain. I also didn't want to be who I was. I always just felt like there was just something wrong with me.
This is a common talking point, by the way. I hear this exact same lineage of thought from almost every single detransitioner who's now speaking out.
And I was trying to figure it out, and I used the internet to help me do that.
Seemingly out of nowhere, we've suddenly seen a huge spike in media depictions and social media depictions of transgenderism. It's even reached the mainstream advertising world.
You might not know this actually, but Axios released a whole story several months ago. It might have been almost a year ago now, unpacking results from a Gallup poll in America that 20%, 1 in 5 Gen Zers is self-identifying as LGBTQ+, and it's doubling between every generation. So that was only 10% for millennials. It was 5% for Gen X, all the way down to like less than 1%, and now it's 20%, presumably, probably because of the influence of mainstream and social media.
The people who are consuming this are children, 13, 14, 15 years old, and it's so easy for them to literally be groomed.
I just woke up one day, looked at myself in the mirror, and asked myself, what the heck am I doing?
When trans identified
That is so sad. Like, genuinely, I feel like I'm gonna cry.
kids are referred to specialized gender clinics, they're often told that they're going to get comprehensive, multidisciplinary mental health assessments. We know that that's not true.
I was easy to manipulate.
The ideology that has become dominant at these clinics is that trans kids know who they are, and therefore to question them is completely taboo.
Like, that is so true. I bet you probably also didn't know. We can talk more about this in a second after the trailer here, but Planned Parenthood is becoming one of, if not the #1 distributor of hormone therapy for young women in particular, and they rarely, if ever, ask for an actual diagnosis or a letter from your therapist, your mental health professional, confirming a diagnosis of gender dysphoria. You can walk into a Planned Parenthood clinic and walk out the same day with a prescription for testosterone because you feel like a boy. So this idea of comprehensive care is a shallow lie. That's not really accurate.
Childhood was ruined.
Who's there for their detransitioning? Nobody.
Nobody would help me because they had more concerns of me reversing everything.
Did this thing to alleviate this gender dysphoria that wasn't there before, but you made it into a problem, and now your body image issues are worse.
So one person in particular says, I was dealing with other mental health issues, not even gender dysphoria, but I was told by medical professionals that I also had gender dysphoria, unbeknownst to me, and it would probably solve all of my problems, but shocker, it didn't.
That's not supposed to happen. What do we do now?
DETRANS. This is this new short documentary, again, produced and released this week by PragerU. Amazing team. They do such incredible work. It's an honor to still tangentially work with them from time to time after my first fun little job out of college at PragerU. The dangers of gender affirming care. So this movie gets released this week. Movie might not even be the right word. The film is 20 minutes long, and I dropped the link for where you guys can download the app to watch this film because I highly, highly recommend if you just want more education on this, you want more exposure to the detransition conversation. And almost instantaneously, the internet starts freaking out. Even before the film was actually released, PragerU was running ads for the DETRANS movie, which just came out now this week. But for the last month or so, they've been doing these ads to try to gain public support for the movie, to make sure people were aware that it was coming out. Advertising, like literally anyone from a media company would do if they were putting out a film. And Reddit became ablaze with people saying how this was right-wing grifter propaganda and how disgusting it was that they had to see ads on YouTube while watching other videos for this particular movie. On Reddit 26 days ago, someone put a screenshot of an ad for this DETRANS movie on the platform and says, anyone else see this crappy anti-trans ad before watching the live stream? One of the worst ways to start my first listen. I doubt they have any control over these ads. For the record, no, you don't have any control over the ads that YouTube places on your channel. They pick and choose what they think is going to articulate well with that channel's following or that channel's user base. But you can usually choose when ads are inserted, but you don't usually get to choose which companies get to place those ads. So this person gets an ad for the DETRANS movie that has yet to come out at that point, and it says, I'm not sure if it'll work for these ads, but you can click it and make sure that it goes away because it's so terrible. We can't watch it. They called it hateful right-wing advertising. Is unfortunately all over YouTube. I'm the furthest from their target audience, but I get those ads all the time. Ugh, F that. YouTube has some serious ad moderation issues because we can do ads for illicit content. Do you know the number of stories I hear from parents who are letting their kids watch YouTube Kids programming and ads for legitimate pornography come up while their children are watching children's approved content? That's totally fine. But sure, YouTube has some serious ad moderation issues with special content guidelines to help protect me from an idea that I don't like when it comes to this subject. This person said, effing nauseating. I also get quite a bit of PragerU stuff on YouTube outside of this particular film. Somebody said, I got this trash ad and I got an American Horror Story ad that came on midway comparing the two because it's a horror story if you want to reunite with the gender that you were born with. Anthony said, YouTube really needs to allow you to block right-wing ads. They have so much money and unlimited resources to just throw at ads on YouTube. That's not true, by the way. And it makes the whole experience worse. I also think they target leftist or LGBT videos. YouTube is a cesspit. This is a new one. I've never heard this one as a right of center creator. A cesspit of right-wing promotional content. I'm sorry. Are we on the same internet? Sometimes I'm convinced that we just live in two different realities and some people have the opposite simulation that I am going through. But no, YouTube is not a cesspit of right-wing promotional content. But okay, this person said this is so depressing. I've been seeing a lot of these on YouTube lately. It pisses me off. I report them whenever I see them, but I honestly think YouTube needs to make some changes with the structures of its ad program. Advertising for hate groups is unacceptable. Advertising for hate groups who are trying to tell the story of individuals, courageous, brave, vulnerable individuals trying to share their experience being shoved into surgeries or hormone treatments that they personally weren't prepared for, trying to be the most authentic versions of themselves, which I thought we were focused on trying to affirm, right? I thought we were focused on trying to uplift and support your most authentic self, right? But as soon as you start to ask some of these questions, you are labeled as a right-wing hate group. You are labeled as this crazy grifter community. And it's really, really crazy to see how deep the indoctrination and the brainwashing actually has gone. 7 months ago, there was a different thread on Reddit about this subject, just more broadly and generally speaking outside of this particular film. And this person said, I hate detransitioners on social media. Whatever happened to love Trump's hate? Love everybody. Just love everybody. They don't love detransitioners. I hate detransitioners on social media. First of all, I understand completely if you felt as if you had made a wrong decision and would like to detransition, but I hate the ones that publicly do it so horribly because we can totally publicly transition. We applaud that. We give brand deals from Tampax, from Kate Spade, From Bud Light to prominent transitioners on social media. As soon as you say it's day 50 of being a girl, we will applaud you with millions upon millions of followers. We will flood your comment section with positivity and support. We'll make sure you have blank checks from the biggest companies on the face of the planet. That's allowed to happen publicly. But people who are vulnerable in sharing, I made the wrong decision, and other people might be as well, you are wrong and you are hated for doing so. The double standard is astounding. Like ones on YouTube or people who do interviews about it. It literally always opens up the door for perfect conservatives were right and, quote, being transgender is dangerous and evil statements in the comments. What I see a lot of them tend to do is completely bash transitioning for teenagers and adults without ever saying that it may have been valid for someone else. I understand that it is very emotional and there can be permanent changes. There actually are always permanent changes, so I think that's important to denote. But it was a commitment that they ventured into. It's not fair to blame the trans community for a mistake like that. I don't think anybody's blaming the trans community overtly. I think there's a lot of blame to be placed around for people who felt that they were unfairly pushed into this, but interesting. Does anybody else feel this way? To end my rant, I'm not even transgender, but I feel so angry thinking about detransitioners who have zero empathy once they go public about it and try to hurt the very community who welcomed them. Fascinating. Fascinating. So meanwhile, the detransitioners that this thread on Reddit is talking about are courageously trying to tell their stories anyway. They're facing unimaginable amounts of hate on social media. They're being canceled literally left, right, and center all over the place, and are still trying to get up and tell the truth about their experience anyway. And I mentioned at the beginning of the stream that one of the most courageous people in doing this is a young woman by the name of Chloe Cole. She sat down with PragerU to do a different interview that was separate from this documentary that I'm highly encouraging you go and watch. And it's about 10 minutes long, but we're only going to react to a few minutes of it. I want you to hear directly from this young woman what her experience was. This isn't propaganda. This isn't somebody trying to sell you on a narrative. This is somebody who has intimately and personally gone through this journey as a self-esteem void teenager in America, someone looking for purpose, someone looking for meaning, someone feeling like they don't fit in, which, if that sounds familiar to you, is a pretty much universal experience for teenage girls in the United States of America. But watch the language that's being used today for today's teenagers, especially if you are a parent, that might be incredibly concerning.
I'm biologically female, but at the age of 12, I decided that I wanted to transition to a male identity.
Did you hear that? At the age of 12, which our society applauds and cheers on. And you might say that's right or wrong. You might agree or disagree with my personal point of view on that. But 12.
Celebrated. With every step of my transition, I got closer to realizing that I'm just never going to be a man. My name is Chloe Cole, and this is my story. My childhood started off fairly normal. I mean, I had both parents in the house, and I've got 4 older siblings. Growing up, I would play a lot of dress-up. I would play with dolls and video games and Legos. You know, I was a bit of a tomboy, and I'm also on the spectrum, so from a pretty early age, I did kind of struggle to get along with my peers, and especially my female peers I never really fit in with. I found
this is super interesting. I don't know if you guys are noticing this. Chat weigh in if you are. I'm noticing a lot of these stories of people who detransition are on the spectrum for autism. They've been diagnosed with autism or Asperger's, and they've been pushed into thinking the reason that you feel like you don't fit in is not because you're on the spectrum. It's because you're actually the opposite gender that you were born with. I have to wonder, I don't know if anybody's doing any studies about this, but I have to wonder if that's like a prevalent thought that people are having in the scientific community in wanting to ask more questions about this. Let me know, chat, if you guys are seeing the same thing.
That I liked being with the boys more, that I felt more at ease with them. As I got older, I started to wonder, like, what was separating me from the other girls and why I was different from them, and I couldn't really figure it out. I started to struggle with this and my body image as well. In the media and online, I would see this specific body type, like hourglass and pear-shaped women who were very, very curvy, and you know, at a young age, I didn't really look like that. I was
Well, because you're 12. Of course you're not going to look like a fully developed grown woman when you are 12 years old. How sad to manipulate a child's imperfect body image, because every teenage girl has an imperfect body image, to try to convince you that you're not really a woman at all.
I was a little more on the athletic side. I had bigger shoulders than I did hips and a little bit of muscle, and I liked having my hair short, and I started to feel like I don't really look like other girls, and I felt like something was wrong with me because of that. And I started to wonder, like, what good am I if I don't feel pretty?
Oh, that's
Maybe I'd
so
just be better off
sad.
as a boy. Using social media from a young age taught me to value my looks and very superficial parts of myself above all. The platform I mainly used was Instagram, which is very image-oriented.
We talked yesterday on the stream, just for the record, about 41 states banding together to sue Meta for, largely through Instagram, creating addictive social media for teenagers that feeds them negative content and negatively contributes to their body image, interestingly. So I didn't even plan for that to carry over into today's stream. But I actually think that a lot of the role of responsibility there falls on parenting. A lot of parents are handing their kids a smartphone at age 9, 10, 11 years old and saying, go nuts, kid, just download and look at whatever you want to on the internet, without realizing what a lot of the content out there actually is.
Trying to make fantasy into reality. I would often hear from other women and girls growing up, like, being a woman is so hard and it's just so terrible. Like, once you hit puberty, you start, like, growing breasts and getting this uncomfortable attention, then you start getting periods, and then you're able to get pregnant and give birth, and it's just such a painful and scary process. And then one day down the road you go through menopause, and it just all sucks, and nobody ever talked about the good things that really come with any of that.
How sad is that? I mean, like, my heart just shatters that we have allowed this supposedly feminist movement that supposedly cares about women, that supposedly is trying to uplift women and empower women, to believe that being a woman is the most painful, disgusting, horrible experience that you could possibly imagine. No part of it is fun. It's all awful. You don't want to get your period. You don't want to grow breasts. You don't want to give birth to a child. In fact, don't even let yourself get to that point. You should just end the life of your child because they're awfully inconvenient to you. You don't want to have to go through menopause, do you? Ironically, then they put beautiful young girls like Chloe through menopause at 15 instead of naturally when your body is supposed to be experiencing that later on in life. But how is that feminist? How is that empowering of women? How is that supporting women to say being a woman just sucks all the time? There's nothing positive. There's nothing beautiful. There's nothing celebratory about that.
So I was already dissociated from other women and even just the idea of being a woman, and I didn't want to grow from a girl into a woman. I wanted a way out, and I learned that apparently there was. I started seeing
A way out. I wanted a way out, and apparently there was a way out. Just run away from being a girl entirely.
content of people identified as lesbian, gay, bisexual, and especially transgender or as some other gender identity. And I learned that I didn't have to be a girl. That I could choose myself. And so I started to cut my hair short and wear more boys' clothing, and I started using a binder, which is a compression device that it's for the purpose of flattening the chest in women.
Which, for the record, can cause irreversible bone damage to your ribs, to your spine, and damage to your lungs as well.
Eventually, I came out to my parents. I decided that I would write in a letter that I wanted to be referred to by a new name and as my parents' son. They weren't really sure what exactly to do from that point on, and they saw it as a psychiatric issue, and they wanted to get to the bottom of it, so I started seeing a therapist. Almost immediately, I was just affirmed, and that was pretty much the only course of treatment.
What did I just say 10 minutes ago? Almost immediately. No further questions asked. Like, yep, let's schedule the surgery. That is way too common. And the fact that people on the internet say you shouldn't even mention that, don't say that, don't say that. Because that makes it seem like you hate trans people. That seems like a pretty freaking big puzzle piece that people should be trying to talk about. To me, I don't know. Maybe I'm crazy, chat. But that feels like a pretty big mental health jump. Or I guess lack thereof of health.
Treatment they took. The problem was, though, there wasn't really any questioning at all of how certain factors in my life would play into this, into the development of my gender dysphoria. I remember after I got the diagnosis for gender dysphoria, I tried talking to my parents about getting on hormones, and I said that I really wanted to start medicalization. They pushed back on it. They told me that it's not going to fix my problems and that I should wait. And
which sadly today in many states in the United States of America, they're trying to say that if a parent says maybe it's not the right time, maybe you need to wait a little bit, they will just straight up take custody of your children away from you. That's currently up for debate in California and Washington. It already is law in Canada. If anybody in the chat is watching from Canada, that's becoming the new norm.
I just felt like they couldn't understand. The medical professionals actually had told them that transitioning was the only way that my dysphoria would resolve, and if I wasn't allowed to transition, that I would be at risk of suicide. They told my parents that, children already know their gender identity by a certain age, so they know what's best for themselves.
Wait, I'm confused. The therapist says that children know their gender identity by a certain age, but then we also say your gender is fluid and that you can always change your mind on that. I actually have no idea how those two things can coexist at the same time. Those two things are quite fundamentally mutually exclusive. Any healthcare practitioners in the chat want to try to weigh in on that?
I was 15 years old at the time that I underwent the removal of my breasts. When I initially woke up from the surgery, I was actually...
Wait. I'm zooming back. Hang on.
They told my parents that, children already know their gender identity by a certain age, so they know what's best for themselves. I was 15 years old at the time that I underwent the removal of my breasts.
15? At 15, you barely even have breasts. 15? Oh my gosh.
When I initially woke up from the surgery, I was actually quite happy. I went home and it felt like it was just a big step in the right direction. And I was, up until just a few months after the surgery, I was completely sure in my decision to do so.
Wow.
I was celebrated. I mean, the people in this community said they were proud of me, and it was like nothing that I'd ever really experienced before. It was like I really felt supported. I hoped that in transitioning I would become more whole, that I would become my real self, and I genuinely believed that I was a boy. With every step of my transition, I got closer to realizing that I'm just never going to be a man.
That is, oh my gosh, this is so sad. Like, truly breaks my heart. I cannot for the life of me wrap my head around how physicians, how medical practitioners, how therapists that are supposed to be treating mental health disorders immediately tell children just like, yep, oh, you're on the spectrum, even better. Here's a prescription. Let's schedule your surgery. To have a double mastectomy at age 15 because all of the healthcare practitioners in your life are telling you that's the only way to feel good about yourself. That's the only way to have a positive body image. That's the only way that you're going to feel like the most authentic version of yourself. And nobody along the way, with the exception of Chloe's parents, even tried to ask questions about it, to try to push back, to say, are you sure? How unbelievably sad. And just as a reminder, this transition from hormones began at age 12. When I was 12 years old, I exclusively hung out with boys because girls were horribly mean. They were awful. Anybody who's survived middle school as a girl knows how truly toxic and terrible middle school girls can be. I was brutally bullied by girls in middle school and in high school, and most of my friends exclusively were boys. I hung out with boys. I had a whole year when I was maybe 10 or 11 where all I wore were baggy gym shorts, boys gym shorts from the boys department at Target or Walmart, and like really clunky skater sneakers and Aeropostale graphic t-shirts. I only hung out with boys. I loved to get dirty and be outside. I used to go over after school and play Call of Duty with all of my guy friends in 7th and 8th grade. If I was doing that now as an 11 or 12-year-old, probably every single medical professional and trusted adult in my life would try to convince me that I was a boy. Would try to have me do the exact same thing. Would sign me up for testosterone injections. Would sign me up for a scheduled double mastectomy or worse. And Chloe is not the only example of kids that are going out of their way to share stories like this, and young adults that experience this as children that are going out of their way to experience things like this. She has been extremely outspoken about her double mastectomy. There are other detransitioners that have experienced even more radical surgeries, like a radical elective hysterectomy, taking out your uterus, your fallopian tubes, and your ovaries, because that's supposed to make you feel more like yourself, apparently. What they don't want to tell you is that puts you into early menopause. So we are literally putting children in this country through menopause before they ever finish going through puberty at age 11 and 12 in certain locations across the country. Our president of the United States has been quoted by saying, and backed up by the press secretary of the United States, any age is an appropriate age to transition. It all comes down to that particular child and their parents. And you're starting to see medical professionals who start to ask questions about this or say maybe this isn't the right approach for us to take if we are truly serious about treating the mental health condition of these children's gender dysphoria. People are advocating for those mental health professionals and medical professionals to have their licenses taken away, to say you shouldn't be able to be a doctor, you shouldn't be able to practice medicine. If you even slightly push back and say, I don't know if this makes a whole lot of sense, I don't think this actually follows the oath that we took to do no harm as physicians and as people trusted to care for people who are sick, people who need our help, and people who desperately need an advocate when the world is trying to shove them into doing something that they might not necessarily be ready for. 15 years old and you feel affirmed to cut your breasts off. Or 16 or 17, feeling like you are ready to undergo a hysterectomy or chop your penis off if we want to be that vulgar about it. That's the reality that our generation is living through, even if there is no documented history of gender dysphoria. Even if you don't even have a diagnosis of gender dysphoria. As I mentioned, Planned Parenthood is quickly becoming one of, if not the single largest provider of hormones for teenagers, particularly teenage girls, with no diagnosis of gender dysphoria. You can just walk into your neighborhood Planned Parenthood clinic and walk out the same day with a prescription for testosterone in hand. We are trying to make this the streamlined process for how we treat teenagers struggling with their identity in America today. And I mentioned it before, every single teenager struggles with their identity, period, full stop. If you are an adolescent, you are struggling to figure out what your role in the world is. You're struggling to answer the question, who am I and what am I doing here and what's the purpose of all of this? You probably almost certainly feel like you don't fit in with your peers or with society because it's awkward and you're changing and you're growing up and you're figuring out what your values are and who you want to spend your time with and what you want to do with your life. The answer for that struggle should never fall in the hands of somebody trying to chop your body parts off or trying to hand you a prescription for a hormone that will cause irreversible damage to your body. And speaking of that buzzword, by the way, you should absolutely check out the book Irreversible Damage by Abigail Schreier if you guys haven't already. Very specifically details what happens when teenage girls transition and how their body is forever and their mind forever altered for the rest of their existence, for the rest of their life. Nobody is talking about that side of the story. Everybody wants to clap and cheer and give tens of millions of followers and blank checks and brand deals to the pro-transition side of this conversation, but very few people are willing to speak out, to ask questions, or to offer an opposing view. And in fact, instead of being willing to speak out, we actually say, those people shouldn't even be allowed to say anything on social media. You get Reddit threads like this: I hate these people on social media. You shouldn't be allowed to post stuff like this. These are radical right-wingers that are trying to indoctrinate everybody. But is that really the case? Chat, I want to know what you think. Should detransitioners be speaking up about their experience on social media, in podcasts, in interviews, etc.? I desperately want to know what you guys think. Kelly has an interesting point of view that she's adding in our Rumble chat. Big surprise. Planned Parenthood is getting in on this. It's a huge moneymaker, and it's already well established that that's one organization with zero morals or ethics. Interestingly, if you think about it from a different perspective too, the goal of Planned Parenthood was founded as an organization to practice eugenics. That is very well known. The founder of Planned Parenthood, Margaret Sanger, has been hugely outspoken about that. And one way to do that without having to deal with pregnancy, because if you don't have to abort a child, if nobody is getting pregnant, you could just make sure nobody has the capacity to get pregnant in the future, which involves sterilization and infertilization. So what can make a teenage girl infertile? Taking massive amounts of testosterone and taking out her uterus. It's an interesting thought to think about the snowball effect of how all of those things are directly related. But I think it's a lot more than turning a profit or making money for Planned Parenthood. I think it also helps them accomplish their original MO as an organization, to just not have new babies, period, full stop. It's a different way to get there. It's a different vehicle to get there, but it accomplishes the same end result. Craven says in all caps, yes, they should. Detransitioners should be speaking out. Pulling the String says, yes, they need a balanced point of view before going through anything. And that's what I think this is all about, right? Like, I am a huge free speech advocate, as much as I really disagree with some of the people that we've been indirectly referencing today on social media, and some faces that you may have seen in the trailer for the DETRANS movie. They have the right to say that. I don't like it, but the best way to beat bad speech is with good speech, in my opinion. The best ways to beat lies is with the truth, not by silencing the lie, not by censoring the lie, but by dragging it out from the darkness into the light and trying to combat lies with objective truth. Jeanette says we should be compassionate. Absolutely. And I think compassion is a really interesting buzzword that should be more involved in this conversation. Inevitably, people who see you ask questions about detransitioning, people who see you ask questions about what age might be appropriate for children to be asking the steps to transition in the first place, immediately you get labeled as this horrible, transphobic, hateful, bigoted, evil person. Your views are outdated. You're no longer welcome in modern society, and we are going to silence and cancel you with every single tool in our toolbox. But I think if we can flip the script a little bit and recenter this conversation on compassion, if we can say, no, to the contrary, I don't hate any of these people. I'm not afraid of any of these people. I really, really care. I really, really care about girls like Chloe, who at 12 feel totally displaced and isolated from their communities and have no way of relating to the young women around them. That's an experience maybe I had as a child, or that's an experience I don't wish on anyone, because that's heartbreaking. If I truly have compassion for people struggling so deeply with their own self-image that they actually think they should change their gender, that they actually think I should take out my uterus or chop my breasts off, maybe we should find the compassion to let her know you were created to be you. You are here as a woman for a reason. You have something unique and special and beautiful to offer the world. as a girl, as a woman. And there's nothing to be ashamed or embarrassed or afraid of when it comes to your true identity that you were born with. That is beautiful compassion, and that is speaking the truth in love, knowing that there's really no reason to experience true hatred here, except with people who may have very ulterior motives. But I think if we can recenter this conversation on being compassionate, on finding empathy for other human beings and trying to speak through feelings, through emotions, but speak facts through feelings, is a really beautiful way to communicate some of that stuff. Kelly says, detransitioners have every right to speak out. It's absolutely free speech. I detest a lot of left-wing talking points, but I defend their right to say them. A freaking men to that. Crazy Cat Lady on Locals says, so many have lost compassion or use it for their own gain, sadly. I think that's up to us, everybody watching this today, to make sure that we can bring compassion back into the fold. Amy says, freedom of speech doesn't feel so free anymore. Absolutely, truth needs to be spoken. That's why I love all that you do. Thank you, Amy. That's so sweet. No BS, straight to the truth. That's what we do around here, and we are very, very, very passionate about it with every passing day. Total Package wants everybody to be able to speak out. Dutch Canadian agrees. It sounds like you guys are agreeing with what I have to say in my point of view, but it's never been more incredibly obvious to me that the young women in particular of my generation desperately need our help. They need truth. They need purpose. They need true affirmation and true acceptance of who they are instead of feeling like they need to run away or escape or have an out from being a woman, the way Chloe just articulated that so beautifully. It's time for us to embrace beautiful, true femininity. It's time for us to truly empower women outside of the lies of modern fourth wave feminism. And I think that starts with us just being willing to tell the truth in love from a place of compassion, no matter what threat of being labeled some stupid non-true label actually looks like, and no matter what comes our way in that capacity. I'm going to redrop the link in our chat in case you guys didn't get it for where you can download the PragerU app to watch this 20-minute documentary, DETRANS. I think it's so unbelievably important that you guys continue to educate yourselves on this subject, because there's not a lot of places that you can go to hear the alternative point of view from the mainstream, and they did a really great job putting this together. It's only about 20 minutes long, not super long, so you guys can definitely check that out if you have a spare few minutes later this afternoon. We are going to jump over to Locals here in just a second for our post-stream Q&A. We do that every single day after the stream. And Rumble, you guys might know, you have a specific button to join us on Locals whenever you want. That's built into the Rumble interface because they are owned by the same company. It's a very seamless process that way. We would love to see you guys join us. We have special Locals only content that only exists over there, some pertaining specifically to dating and relationships, some to faith and spirituality, and obviously we are live every single day at 3 p.m. Eastern, talking about the biggest cultural issues from a Gen Z perspective. We had a ton of viewers today, and we would love to see all of you guys come back and join us tomorrow. We have a very special guest joining us tomorrow. If you've ever watched the Ocean's movies, if you've ever watched James Bond, if you've ever seen Pirates of the Caribbean, if you've ever watched Madagascar or Kung Fu Panda, and you love the scores and the music from those films, we're going to be joined by legendary music composer and producer Stephen Hilton tomorrow on the stream, who is exposing the behind the scenes of what is happening in Hollywood that the average consumer might not be aware of. You guys have probably seen Steven's videos go super viral on TikTok and on Instagram. He also just recently launched a Rumble channel with his new show, so we're super excited to have him on the stream tomorrow. Skadoosh is right, TIML, over on Rumble. We'll be doing that at 3 p.m. Eastern tomorrow, and would love to see you guys join us. Make sure as you're leaving to hit the like button if you haven't already. That looks like a little thumbs up or a little heart. Ring that notification bell so that you always know when we are going live or uploading a new video. And you know the drill. Most importantly, smash that follow or subscribe button to make sure that you always are following along and helping us to continue growing our community. YouTube, Rumble, Facebook, and Getter. We will see you guys tomorrow. Locals, don't go anywhere. We will be right back.